Good afternoon. This is Talking Trade Live with On the Tools. My name's Andy. I'm going to be the host for the next half hour or so. And today we're talking about which trade do you believe has been affected most by COVID? There's also been an announcement from what's his chops, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Mr. Sunak, about all the different things which the money's putting into construction. We're going to talk about that, and I'm very lucky to have James, plumber, Jordan, electrician, joining me. First question, guys. James, how have you been affected by COVID, mate?
Well, the first week was absolutely terrifying. Everyone went completely potty, didn't they? They were all really, really scared as to what was going to happen, and that resulted in a lot of work just disappearing, like in front of my eyes. Not only like on the tools, but also like noticed things like YouTube and stuff like that. Advertisers were just killing their budgets all over the place. But then bathrooms, boiler changes, bigger jobs like that, all just wiped off the slate. But I would have said in the last couple of weeks, it's all slowly starting to pick up again. Really, really positive. And I'm hoping that we're set for that to continue.
Jordan, have you been similar in terms of COVID? Are you back fully yet, or are you sort of bits and pieces still?
Yeah, I'm absolutely flat out at the moment. It's busier than I've ever been before. But it was similar to James at the start. Like the phone just stopped ringing. It was just deadly silence for a few weeks during the lockdown. Fortunately, I had a few jobs where I could work alone, and I was able to sort of tick over on those projects. But like usually, I have a couple of subbies working for me, and I just couldn't do anything, give anything to them really. And then, last few weeks, it's just gone absolutely mad as everyone's decided to get on with projects that they've been shelving for a while. So it's literally busier than ever at the moment.
Well, the great news is you're both back to work and flying, but there's other trades that have been affected possibly more. We know there's now material shortages we talked about briefly before coming on air. So do you think, James, that more finishing trades, decorators, plasterers, have been affected slightly more than maybe the likes of yourself?
Yeah, I'd say the trades that have struggled are going to be the ones that aren't going to be able to get materials. And like we said earlier on, plaster is going to be a nightmare to get hold of unless you go on eBay and find a hard old bag that's up for sale for a ridiculous amount of money. Things like OSB, wood, imports, things like that are all going to be affected. And I think, copper, let's face it, next door to us is a scrapyard, and their copper price just fell through the floor because they were finding that over in the east, they weren't buying it anymore. So a lot of trades have been affected, right down to our scrapyards that we use.
Well, Chris Davis, thanks for your comment. Please, anybody watching, send them in. We're going to read out as many as we can. Chris Davis, he said he's from the National Federation of the Self-Employed and Small Business. Would anyone like to know about what we've been doing to help? I've got to say, 100%, mate, because regular viewers will know my stance on certain federation and trade bodies saying they're doing a lot, but actually what are they doing for us trades to help us get back to work, move forward, etc. In my eyes, not a lot. So Chris Davis, he said about coming on as guest, just drop a couple of messages as a comment this week, just a sort of snap line of what you've been doing, because it'd be great to hear how you've been helping us get back to work. And we need the help. Listen, a lot of us are out of work for a long time. The great news, James, plumber, Jordan Spark, and others are going back and flying along. Gary McLaughlin Brown has said, has cable price not been increased by 20%? Straight over to our expert Spark.
I have not heard that, but I wouldn't be surprised. To be honest, I've not really got my fingers on the pulse of cable prices. I just pick up the cable and don't think twice about it. But yeah, you might be right, actually. I need to check that. It's an interesting point.
Jordan, you've just said a really, really good point. All of us with trade accounts, we go back to work, you turn it, doesn't matter if you've got wholesalers, big national, regional suppliers, you load your van up and go. So exactly. I haven't checked my prices. I might be paying 30% more on timber. I don't know. So, James, is this something that us trades need to look at a bit more, that before we go and start loading up, and obviously being a plumber with copper and boilers and fittings and all the other bits and pieces, get prices checked on your account, because they might have done a bit of a sneaky one?
Well, you always find that in plumbing with copper. I mean, copper prices change all the time, like every day. And I'm sure, obviously, cable being made of copper, you're going to find the same thing there as well. Funny thing you did say there, though, was you load up your van and go. I went to my local suppliers just yesterday. They had the sliding door up by about a metre. We had to sit outside, and literally they're chucking stuff out under the door. You're not allowed to go in and get your cup of coffee or anything like that. And it's just really, really strange, but also kind of funny as well that we're all sat out there and in the rain having that happen.
Well, that was the next question. When I went back to a big national suppliers who's literally not far from me, you're talking everything from your landscaping to your timber, plasterboard and everything. You've one in, one out. Now, this is taking so much longer. I mean, you certainly don't go there first thing, 7:30, because you're going to be there for ages. But is this something, Jordan, do you think we got to build this into our pricing? Because you can be there 2.5 hours, just loading up a bit of, 4x2, and suddenly you've lost half a day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing that people often don't price into the jobs, is actually the time it takes to get materials and stuff running around. It's all time that you don't necessarily put on the bill, but actually you need to factor that in when you're invoicing customers. And you're right as well, certain times of day are better to go. So maybe a bit of planning in advance is in order. If you've got your wits about you, then you plan ahead and try and time it well, then you'll save a bit of time and you won't be just sitting around queuing for ages.
If you've just joined us, we are talking about which trade's been affected more than others, or are we all the same in terms of how COVID has affected us? And also we're going to touch upon Mr. Sunak's announcement from the sort of mini budget about all the extra money he's chucking into construction. Where it's going, honestly, is beyond me, but we'll do that in a minute. I just want to pick up on a comment from somebody watching in the US, Carol Brogan. Hi, Carol. Thanks for tuning in. It's always good to hear of how things are going over the pond. Strapped for some supplies, covers for window wells, etc. So you've had to start renting out units to get more dollars coming in. So again, this material shortage, we go to the States. I'm not quite sure what part of the States she's in, but, this isn't just Britain and Europe. This seems to be a massive global thing. Are we going to run out of gear? James, do you think this is a possibility? Because this isn't just a regional thing. This is international.
Yeah, I mean, I've said from a very early start, actually, the only thing that's unprecedented about this pandemic is our reaction to it and the fact that it has encompassed the whole world when it comes to the economy. And because of that, I mean, everything's stagnated together. And it's one thing putting a stimulus here, a stimulus there. And what I mean by that is certain countries doing this, certain countries doing that. We're all at different stages when it comes to what's going on at the moment. I mean, look at South America. It's only just picking up there. Whereas in Europe, we're largely in a recovery. Therefore, I think this is going to go on for quite a while. And it is all about a slow lifting of economies, therefore materials so we can work, rather than just little spikes here and there of, I said spike, sorry, here and there of sort of recovery.
Well, Nancy Klein, thanks for saying hi. You're in Michigan in the States. You're a spark. Oh, sorry, that's our slang term for electrician. Could you let us know, are you having any problems with materials? How has it been for you being an electrician in the States with COVID? Have you gone back to work? Are you still off work? How is it affecting you? And we've got our resident expert spark, Jordan, who will love to hear from you and obviously sort of compare notes of how it is being an electrician at these difficult times. So we're talking about which trade has been affected more. I think without going into too much detail, we know the problems with some materials like plaster, which seems to be the most topical thing at the moment because the poor spreads really are struggling. There is another company who is producing plaster, so there is other options. But I think as the lady in America, sorry, her comment's gone off the screen. Jordan, do you think that in times like these, when some people may not be at work because of COVID, you've got to look at possibly other ways of earning a few quid, because some people are a lot more affected than others?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a spread, for example, and you can't go out and work, you've got two options: either sort of sit around and sit on your hands and wait, or try and make good use of the time and do something else, find another way of earning a bit of money, whatever that might be. Some people find ways to earn money online. whatever you can do, it's definitely good to look at your options. Unfortunately, it's not the kind of thing you would choose, but you've got to just make the best of it, really.
James, up your way, you're sort of based Cambridge way. Have you seen or heard of other trades that are suffering going back to work? Because where I am in London, there are definitely people going back to work. I'm back to work. It is a bit eerie still. Apart from, as Jordan said, the rush hour as soon as all the merchants open. But are you hearing still sort of mates and colleagues up there that are suffering still, or are they all back to work?
Everyone trades-wise is back, apart from the big one, like we've said earlier on, plasterers are still struggling massively to get plaster. And without that, they're basically done for, aren't they? I also have found that certain trades have, I think we've had a little slight increase in van break-ins, that sort of thing. People are just desperate to try and get, whatever they can, however they can. But definitely, it seems when it comes to plumbers, chippies and sparkies, I'm sure Jordan will sort of back us up on this. Not only did we kind of not stop, but we've gone back. Everything seems to be going. I mean, I'm just speaking from personal experience here. Everything seems to be back to normal now and actually booming almost.
Good to hear, Jordan. We've got a brilliant comment, because one thing we've not thought about, Leicester is on lockdown. Very different from Cambridge, very different from London, very different from the rest of the country. Sorry, his comment is just, here we go. Robert Andrea Koki, Leicester's very affected. He's a builder from Leicester. Robert, love to hear more. Are you on complete lockdown, mate? Because it's a bit of a microclimate where you are in terms of Leicester being on lockdown. Are you able to get to work? Jordan, do you think we're going to see more of these sort of towns and cities being put on lockdown? Because that is going to affect us trades massively.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to happen. Unfortunately, Leicester is maybe a preview of what's going to happen in a lot of other places, because unfortunately, a lot of people have become complacent and going back to normal, and you can't, because there's still a virus out there. So unfortunately, there are going to be peaks. And what is happening, I think, now where we are, is that everyone's trying to cram in as much as they can before that happens. It's almost like people are scared that there's going to be a second wave, so we need to get all our projects done now. Yeah. And electricians and plumbers are all working flat out because they're thinking, if I have to stop working again for 2 months, I'm going to need the extra money. So some guys I know working 7 days a week at the moment, like 12-hour days, just to earn as much as they can before the second wave hits, for example.
Well, Rich Phillips, crane operators in his area. Rich, could you let us know where you are, mate? Because he said crane operators are being affected. So that's another trade that's suffering. Looking at other people, Carol Brogan. Oh, I hate hearing this, but we've got to talk about it because it's part of our industry. Carol had people break into her site and walk off with electrical panels and microwaves. I mean, this, James, you mentioned it briefly, van and tool theft, but also material theft. If you've got bundles of 15, 22, 28 mil copper sitting in a room that people can see from the outside that haven't been working, we're running the risk of more stuff being nicked, aren't we?
Yeah, especially if you're doing a rip out. I remember I was in Watford working at my brother's house, and we did a big old rip out there, threw everything out onto the front garden, and straight away people are literally trying to nick all the old copper that you've taken out. And you sort of have to learn, I think. It's one of those things, but get it in the back of the van as soon as you can and lock it. Make sure that people can't steal it. But then again, you've got things like sheet materials. I mean, I'm hearing of Celotex being nicked because it's not cheap, or other sheet materials are available and all that. But yeah, sheet materials aren't cheap, and they're being lifted as well by almost organised gangs.
Well, back to the question which we're talking about. The main question of the show: which trade is being affected the most by COVID? Straight on, multi-trades. People like me, little company doing extensions and refurbs. If we're having gear nicked, if we've got subbies like James and Jordan that are flat out doing their own thing, we can't get trades. So I'm going to throw a comment out there, and please send your views. Doesn't matter how abrupt or rude it is. Let's have a good old chat. I think multi-trades are being affected the most by, we can't get subbies because they're all doing their own things. As Jordan said, working 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And a lot of the materials we need And obviously running right across from digger through to paint, you need a lot of materials. We're suffering. So I reckon Maltese are struggling the most. But Jordan, Sparks, you've obviously got your wholesalers where you get your gear. It is fairly specialist in terms of materials. You know, it's cable, back boxes, face plates, trunking, that sort of thing. But you've not seen a massive problem with that. One thing I want to ask you, my electrician, Nick, who's a brilliant guy, we were doing this refurb and the lady asked for brush comb. She wanted MK faceplates. Now, apparently, the little component in the back of dimmers is made in China. There's a massive shortage of these over here. Have you got any shortages up your way?
Not of dimmers, although I've not fitted many lately, but things like I had a LED strip lighting job the other day and the manufacturers couldn't get some of the parts for that. I think it was like LED drivers, again, made in China. Also, I've got an underfloor heating job that I'm doing tomorrow, and I've had massive delays with the underfloor heating mat on that because, again, the company is just like on go slow, basically.
All right, John, let me put this to you. I had the same. We don't laugh. We couldn't get paint for this job. You can't write this. What a great industry. I had still had to pay guys going in. I was meant to be in, but I was, just cleaning up really because we couldn't crack on. Who should foot that bill? It's not our fault, is it? But it's always the trades that swallow it.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. And I don't think there's going to be much that's going to change that, unfortunately. Because although it'd be lovely to just be able to send the customer a bill, you can't do it. So there's a gap there, really. Somebody needs to step in and help. And I suppose that's the government, really. But, so far we've not seen that much help about what you're talking about anyway.
Scotty Friel, you can't write it. The ice cream van's back. 10-1. He's on time all the time. Jack Jones. This is something which I want to quickly look at. Is other industries. The pleasure craft industry is taking a hit. Boat builders are looking for work elsewhere. Tourism industry, as we know, is smashed to pieces. That's taking a hit. So shipwrights are also taking the brunt of it. So are we now going to have more people coming into construction? Because we were the first industry back. Are we going to have more people coming in to try and earn a few quid? Does that therefore mean, James, do you think we're going to have a lot of chances just trying to earn a few quid, which means the quality of work's going to drop?
Well, I think you'll find, if that's the case, people like myself and Jordan are going to be picking up quite a lot of work in about 2 months' time, fixing all of it. Because it is, you can't just go in and start sling a boiler in. Oh, yeah, it's really easy. I'll watch how to do it on YouTube. I mean, who does that? I've
seen it, sadly.
And it's the same for, surely it's got to be the same for an electrician and also yourself, Andy, with stuff like, I laid my own paving, okay? And I really want someone like you to come and sort it out now. So if you are going to get people coming in from other trades, okay, they might be handy with their hands and all that sort of stuff. But do they really know the ins and outs of what they're going to try and do? Are they really qualified? And are we going to see an uptake in us fixing their work in a few months' time?
Well, I think one thing I remember from the 07-08 crash, the way I phrased it, it shook out a lot of the shit from our industry. The ones that were coming in that you can clearly see weren't a skilled or experienced trade got found out, and we ended up with guys like yourselves that have been doing it a long time that are good, which puts the standard up. Now, one announcement from Mr. Sunak, and he's come out with an awful lot recently, bless him, he's obviously a busy boy. Stamp duty freeze on properties up to $500,000. Jordan, do you think that's going to help tradespeople in terms of more people possibly saving up to 10 grand? Therefore, they're going to be potentially chucking this into renovation works. Electrics, plumbing, plastering, etc. are going to potentially, do you think, have more work because of this freeze?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. That extra 10 grand, usually people don't leave it sitting in their pockets, that it'll burn a hole in their pockets. So hopefully that will translate into more work for us. And I think it's also going to translate into more property purchases happening, which generates more work anyway. Yep. That difference in the stamp duty thing will encourage more people to buy properties, which is going to result in more work for us as well.
James, I've got to read this word for word because I tried to memorise it, but to me it doesn't make sense. Please inform me. £5.8 billion will be spent on shovel-ready construction projects to get Britain building. Now, first of all, what do you class as shovel ready? Because that's a new one on me. Most new builds have diggers in my job, but there we go. Is this just a PR stunt? The Chancellor of the Exchequer chucking a load of money at construction. Let's get everyone working. Let's get the economy booming. Well, hang on, we got no apprentices or materials. Has he thought this through?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I suppose the shovel-ready thing is a headline, but looking at the other things that they're going to be doing, which I think are really quite positive, the plan for jobs that they're doing, I'm just looking at what they've got up here now. They're putting 9 billion in, and the fund will create government subsidised jobs for unemployed young people, and employers will be able to offer 6-month placement for people aged between 16 and 24. If I was an apprentice, my ears would be like, whoa, or if I was looking to get an apprenticeship. Also, the Treasury are going to cover 100% of national minimum wage for each young employee up to 25 hours a week, with firms being able to update the remainder of the workers' pay. So it's those little things. I mean, it's one thing saying shovel ready, there's a load of money here, but how is that money going to get to us? And as I suppose, look, we're all really busy running our businesses and things like that, but a massive part of running your business is having a really good relationship with your accountant if you have one, but also being alongside the .gov website so you can keep up to date with what's happening and how you can get hold of it. But massive recommendation from me personally is to get a good accountant who's going to be able to recommend and advise you on how you can take advantage of these schemes.
Jordan, do you think all this money, and as James and I have just said, we're talking billions, we're not talking a few quid. Is a lot of this money going to go to the big boys? Are the likes of us three ever going to see a penny of it, or small house builders?
That's the worry, is that often all of this money does go to line the pockets of big construction companies. The big national builders, which, to be fair, they create a lot of jobs. And so that's good, but there's a lot of will it reach us? Not directly, maybe indirectly it will help. I wouldn't say directly we'll benefit that much from it.
I just want to read a comment. As I say, please keep comments coming in. We're talking about which trade has been affected the most by COVID, and also these billions that are being pumped into construction. Good, bad, ugly. Where's it going? Where do all you see that money going? And the likes of us small companies, are we going to see it? James Hayden, your comment has jumped out at me, and I'm sorry to hear this, but I want to sort of see if we can offer any advice or help. Jason said, my work is predominantly working with elderly, disabled and stroke victims, so my business has been non-existent, as you can imagine. The medication my clients are on renders their immune system almost completely useless, meaning I can't work in their properties. He's facing winding up his company. Now, first of all, Jason, thanks for being honest and telling us that. James, first of all, this isn't the first. I don't think it's going to be the last. It's a terrible story. A hard-working tradesperson is going to have to potentially wind their company up because of this. Can you offer any advice, maybe at looking at other sectors or parts to work in? Because the last we want to see is another trade going pop.
Yeah, I mean, not knowing what Jason actually does, I'm just looking at his comment myself. I don't know what he's working in. I mean, if he's a plumber or an electrician, he should hopefully be able to try and branch out there. But all these things take time, don't they? Like, oh, I'm now going to start advertising in the local newspaper for other work. It's great saying that, but it takes time making the advert, getting it put in there. I mean, I'm always a big believer. It's great to say, here's how you save your business, but getting down to doing it is a big issue, and it's not easy. I mean, looking at what Jason's here at the moment, he's obviously interested in the trades, and I'm sure that's going to be, he's going to be able to say that in his business as well, and he's going to act like that. So, Jason, I'll just say, I don't know what to say. You obviously are getting your head down. The advice on trying to get out there, try and tell your friends that you need some work. This is going to blow over. Try and last 6 months. Take it a week at a time. See what you can do. See if you can get a mortgage holiday. All those things. Just do as much as you can. Speak to your accountant and see if there's any kind of breaks that you can get, because they are out there. It's just knowing where they are and how to get them.
Yeah, I think, Jordan, I think the thing which has been a little bit grey has been the financial aid small companies can get. Sole directors getting square root of nothing. Bounce back loans you can apply for. I've applied for it and got it. Anything you could say to Jason, just quickly, just as you say, reach social media is a great place to speak to people, isn't it? There's an awful lot of stuff you can do on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So put the message out there. One thing I would say, thinking about what James said about advertising taking a while to kick in, what can be good, I know what's benefited me in the past is these kind of lead generation websites. I know there's, a lot of people hate them, but if you're looking for instant work, which he obviously is, then it might be a good way to just jump on there, buy a few leads for some jobs and see if you can get a few jobs that way.
Good point. Now we're talking about which trade's been affected most. We have our first roofer. He's got representing the roofing gang. Hopefully he's not writing this while sitting on a ridge. Definitely roofing. This is Dylan Trevitt. People don't want their roofs done due to social distancing, but on the flip side, houses aren't being put up and built, so roofs aren't being put on. James, he's got a good point. Roofers could be up there with the ones missing out the most, couldn't they?
I mean, it's crackers, isn't it? If you're on a roof, how many other people up there that you need to social distance from them? I've got a mate who's a roofer, and I don't know, other than the usual thing I hear from him, i.e. it's too wet today or it's too hot today, he's still sort of carrying on somehow. I mean, he works for a company, there's about 20 blokes on board, and they do a lot of local work in the Cambridge area. So maybe they've got that sort of clientele that they're still using. I mean, I don't know what to say on that one. I just can't believe he can't social distance on a roof.
Well, I think one thing he said is possibly the clients don't want people coming onto their property, but also new builds. If they're not up to plate, we can't start pitching roofs, and the roofers can't come in and start, chucking tiles, felt and batten on. Jordan, handyman business, John Breshears, he's flat out with work. We've had a couple of renderers on that are flat out with work. So the great thing is a lot of people are going back. But I do roofing's a good, I hadn't thought of that as a trade that would be affected, but hearing Dylan's comment, plasters with material shortages, are we going to therefore see more apprentices wanting to get into certain trades because of what's going on at the moment? Because if you look at it as a youngster, seeing you two busy, they're not going to want to be a roofer, are they? So we're going to have a shortage in those areas?
Who are you going for, Jordan or
James?
James?
I know that I've had a massive amount. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Go, Jordan. Sorry, we got a slight time lag, I think, here, mate. But crack on.
You sort of skipped a little bit there, but I've had loads of youngsters contacting me on Instagram and through my YouTube channel asking this question, like, how can I get into being an electrician? There's a massive interest at the moment in getting into trades like electrician and plumber. And I think probably part of that is what you're saying, because a lot of the other trades are suffering more than we have. And so people see the opportunity there, the amount of work that's out there and the potential for earning, and they want to go for that.
How are you finding it in people's houses, Jordan? Being back in as a Spark, obviously you turn up in your stretch limo on Spark salary, and customers see you get out with your little maid carrying all your tools. How have customers been with you, mate? Because obviously being in people's houses, I guess some are going to need the work doing, but others are going to be cover up with gloves and masks.
Absolutely, yeah, it's really varied a lot. So like I had one guy come out to me, big chief of a pharmaceutical company, try to shake my hand and not like obeying social distancing at all. And then I've had other people who are like totally on edge and like really, really kind of freaking out about having somebody in their house, and you have to really explain yourself to them. Well, I had a lady phone me today about a job that we were supposed to go to this afternoon, saying, I just want to make sure that your guys will be wearing gloves and a mask because I've got family members who are susceptible. So I'm just trying to be super careful and doing all the things that we should do: mask, gloves, hand sanitizer, all that kind of thing. But some people look at you like you're a mad person going into the house like that.
Well, what have we got? We've got a few minutes left. So I think we've seemed to establish, in terms of which trade's been affected most by COVID, the good news is some trades seem to be back generally at work. So electricians, plumbers, I would have thought other trades as well, like chippies, but roofers, spreads, etc., seem to be struggling. And just quickly to finish off the second part, we've looked at Mr. Sunak's announcement with all the money coming in. I just want to read another comment of his. This is about upgrading current buildings, if you like, retrofitting. 3 billion green investment package that could help support around 140,000 green jobs and upgrade buildings and reduce emissions. So obviously, James, being a plumber, you know, air and ground source heat pumps, more green ways of heating a home. Is this good news, or is it all just PR rubbish?
I think some of it might be a bit PR rubbish, but because you have to be pretty. It's an extra qualification, effectively. You can't just start slinging in air source or ground source heat pumps.
Yeah.
Also, the units themselves are a lot more expensive. And yeah, it's one of those things. It's quite sort of difficult to suddenly just go into and capitalise on that side of the government stimulus. But going back to some of the things that you guys were saying about apprenticeships, now if I was looking to get into an apprenticeship at the moment, you've got a real golden opportunity, because looking at some of the things they're saying on the budget, you've got 111 million quid. Sorry about that. The guy over at the thing is chopping up a load of metal now. But you've got 111 million quid using for traineeships, so £1,000 per trainee, and that's capped at 10 jobs per firm. So you're not going to get your big house builders just nicking all of that grant. But also, you're going to get £2,000 for every new apprentice taken on who's under the age of 25. Can you hear that out there?
Well, it's a typical Scrappy, isn't he? Cutting up all the copper and God knows what else.
I said to him, shut up while I'm on here, mate.
Well, we haven't got long left. Jordan, just in terms of work you do in sort of retrofitting, obviously, as we know, old electrics aren't clever. The house we're on, I reckon, well, the board was from the 60s. God knows what was in the lath and plaster walls and ceilings. But if there's more money coming into that, I think it's good, because it's going to create more work. Because as you know, especially Sparks, you go in, smash the place to pieces. You know, the likes of plasterers and decorators, they're going to get a load of work because of that, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's always making good to do after electricians. And talking about all these green kind of initiatives, actually, I'm seeing a massive increase in all that kind of stuff at the moment with EV charging. That's a massive growth industry for my business at the moment, and so as well. Those will all be boosted by the government's initiatives with these green projects for sure.
Just a couple of comments on which trade's been affected, good or bad, by this. Max Kelly, he's a bricklayer, absolutely flat out. Great to hear, Max. Please, I really hope you carry on being busy. Lee Fleming is a joiner, works for agencies. He was getting offered 6 jobs a day before all this, and at the moment he's getting offered nothing. Hopefully it will pick up soon. So potentially it'd be interesting, Lee, just, I don't know, we're running out of time, but see where you are in the country, because certainly this seems to be regional. Some parts everyone's busy, some parts is a lot quieter, and obviously we sort of touched upon, hopefully this money coming from government is going to increase things. We're running out of time. James, just quickly to finish off, I'd just like to ask your final comment. Are we going to get through this as an industry, or are we going to be struggling for a while because of the lack of materials, people being out of work, etc.? Or as usual, are we the lot that pull the whole country up and get on with it?
I think we already are pulling up the country. We are already getting on with it. I think tradesmen are always fairly level-headed when it comes to a lot of things. And I think any tradesman that might have spent any time looking at what's going on in countries that have already sort of lifted lockdown long ago, they're probably going to know that the likelihood of a second spike is actually waning now. We are going to be able to go back to work. We're going to be able to earn money. We're going to get the economy going. If you're an apprentice, you're going to be able to take use, hopefully, of these budgets, as long as these businesses can take it on. So, yeah, as long as we're out there working, I think the economy is going to come up with us. I mean, Jerry's out there now cutting stuff up.
Well, Jordan, just finally, are you in agreement with James? Do you think we're going to be the industry that pulls the country up, or are we going to be suffering for a bit because of the lack of materials and possibly apprentices coming in?
Yeah. I think this is a time of opportunity for people to really look at. It's, how do I explain it? It's almost like sink or swim time, really. And I think a lot of people out there in the construction industry are ready to swim, and they're ready to try different things and adapt. And those who do will do well and thrive, and those who don't might sink.
Well, it's been a great show, James, Plumber Parts, and Jordan from Artisan Electrics. Thanks ever so much. If you're having a crap day, if you're suffering for work, just think of this Porsche fella called Leo Vanek. Always good to finish with something quite amusing. He's got a hot dog stand on his work site giving out free hot dogs for lunch today. And right now there's a queue for the bathroom. You can't write this stuff, but that is why we're in the best industry. Have a good afternoon.
Cheers, guys.